The Scythe Dominion had expanded unchecked for centuries. Their fleets, an organic fusion of living metal and hive intelligence, had crushed every species they encountered. Their empires spanned thousands of worlds, a tapestry woven in conquest. Yet on the outskirts of an unremarkable star system, they encountered something they could not comprehend, something that made them hesitate for the first time. A single human warship. The ISV Ironclad was patrolling the outer edges of human-controlled space when the Dominion fleet emerged from the void. Not a grand invasion, just a small scouting fleet of 6 warships, sleek and pulsating with living metal, each one capable of ripping apart planetary defenses with ease. Commander Veth Ka, leading the Dominion fleet, barely gave the human vessel a thought. It was alone, an insignificant blip on their scanners. "Scan it," he ordered. The results returned almost instantly. And that was when everything changed. "What is this?" Veth Ka muttered, gripping the command node as if the data were faulty. He ordered the scan again. The same terrifying reality confronted him. The Ironclad was monstrous. It was a fortress, not a ship. Where Dominion vessels were elegant, shaped for efficiency, this thing was a brutal, angular beast of armor and guns. Its hull was forged not for speed or grace, but for survival, built with layer upon layer of reinforced plating, redundant shielding, and a spinal structure so over-engineered that it could remain intact even with half of it blown apart. Dominion warships were alive. If damaged, they bled, regenerating over time. The Ironclad was dead metal, but its redundancy was something no Dominion ship could match. And then the true horror set in. The ship had no energy-based weaponry, no elegant disintegration lances or molecular destabilizers. Instead, its primary armaments were railguns, ancient, savage weapons that hurled kinetic slugs at nearly light speed. Each impact, the scan predicted, would not just pierce a Dominion ship, but shatter it. The Dominion did not use kinetic weapons. They were inefficient, wasteful. Humans, however, had perfected them to an art form. And worse, the ship carried nuclear warheads. Veth Ka recoiled at the thought. Nuclear weapons, not designed to disable, not designed to incapacitate. They contaminated entire battlefields, leaving zones of lingering radiation that would render planets uninhabitable. It was barbaric. It was terrifying. And then they found the worst part. Veth Ka expected the ship to be piloted by an AI overlord, a singular intelligence governing its every function. Instead, the ship was crewed by thousands of individuals, each an independent, unpredictable entity, with minds that did not sync, did not follow a singular directive. A fleet should not function this way. The Dominion relied on the perfection of the hive mind, each warship an extension of the whole. Humans did not. Their fleet structure was chaos, and yet their wars proved them superior. They adapted, they thought on their own, and they refused to surrender. The ship had no retreat protocols. Every Dominion ship, when critically damaged, would send a distress call, signaling submission, requesting retrieval. It was natural, logical, but the Ironclad had no such system. The scan revealed records from past battles. Even when outnumbered, even when heavily damaged, human warships had kept fighting. Some had been torn apart, but instead of fleeing, instead of accepting defeat, their final act had been to ram their enemies, turning their own destruction into a weapon. The humans did not fight wars to survive. They fought to win. The scan ended. The bridge of Veth Ka's flagship was silent. The Scythe Dominion had encountered countless species before. They had seen civilizations rise and fall. But this was different. Veth Ka's limbs trembled. The realization settled into his core consciousness. They could never allow their empire to engage these creatures in war. They could never allow the humans to know they were watching. Veth Ka deleted the scan data from the fleet's shared memory. He sent an immediate command. Reverse course. Do not engage. Never engage. The Scythe Dominion fled. For the first time in its history, it chose not to fight. And the humans, aboard the Ironclad, never even realized what had happened. They simply continued their patrol, unaware that they had just terrified an empire. The Scythe Dominion did not flee. Not truly. Yes, Vethka had ordered the immediate retreat, the purging of the scanned data, the erasure of all records of a human warship from their archives. But the Dominion was a vast and methodical empire, and its rulers, the Elder Brood Minds, demanded answers. Vethka's ship returned to Dominion space under strict orders. Report. Explain. Justify. And he tried. But when he spoke of a ship that would fight to the last, of a species that had no retreat protocol, of primitive kinetic weapons so devastating they could obliterate a Dominion battleship in one shot, his words were met with skepticism. Rescan the vessel, the Brood Minds commanded. Bring us confirmation. Vethka wanted to refuse. Every instinct in his hive-bound soul screamed against it. But to refuse an order from the Elder Brood Minds was unthinkable. And so, a second fleet was sent. A silent fleet. This time they would observe. This time they would take no risks. This time they would scan deeper. And this time the humans would notice. The side Dominion observation fleet consisted of 3 cloaked vessels, their hulls laced with phased-light camouflage, bending radiation and optical sensors alike. These ships were not warships. They were shadows, built to infiltrate, to study, and to erase all traces of their presence before a species even realized they had been observed. They entered the human system in total silence, drifting among the asteroids, watching. And there it was, ISV Ironclad, still patrolling the void, still radiating that unnerving human resilience. Begin deep scan, the lead observer, Krethak, commanded. Their instruments activated, more detailed than before, probing every inch of the vessel. They would find weaknesses. They would uncover the truth. And that was when the nightmare began. The first scan had been terrifying. The second scan? It was worse. Not only was the Ironclad still an unyielding fortress, not only did it carry kinetic weapons that could annihilate a Dominion fleet, but something new emerged from the scan. Something the First Fleet had missed. Humanity had been holding back. The Ironclad was not a frontline warship. It was a patrol ship, a low-tier vessel meant for border surveillance and escort duties. The real warships were elsewhere. Krethak felt his sensory tendrils coil in dread. His mind swarmed with the implications. This was a mid-sized human warship, not an apex predator. And yet, it still carried enough destructive force to exterminate an entire Dominion battle group. The Brood Minds had assumed humans were a fledgling power, dangerous but limited. But if this was not even one of their primary warships, then what true horrors lay deeper in human space? Then the scan reached the ship's databanks. And that was when they learned the final, most horrifying truth. The Ironclad's computer contained records of human warfare, encrypted but partially visible. The Dominion scanners deciphered fragments, just enough to understand. What they found shattered them. Human wars were beyond brutal. There were log entries of battles waged on planetary surfaces, where entire continents had burned under human firepower. There were tactical breakdowns of space engagements, detailing how humans had fought fleets 10 times their size and won. There were historical records of wars fought before humanity even left their homeworld, conflicts that had driven them to perfect war as an art form before they even touched the stars. And finally, there were schematics, not of the Ironclad, but of larger, deadlier vessels. Super dreadnoughts, Titan-class carriers, planetary siege platforms. The Side Dominion had feared the Ironclad, but this was merely a drop in the ocean of human military might. They were not just a dangerous species. They were a war-born species. In their growing panic, the Dominion observers made a fatal mistake. Their cloak flickered, just for a millisecond, but it was enough. The Ironclad sensors picked it up. Its AI, Dante 7, flagged an anomaly in local space. The ship's radar pulse intensified, sweeping for intrusions. Aboard the Ironclad, Captain Elias Monroe frowned as a proximity alert rang through the bridge. Unknown signature detected, his tactical officer reported. Brief flicker might be nothing. Monroe leaned forward. His instinct screamed otherwise. Run an active sweep, he ordered. The Ironclad sent out a high-frequency resonance scan, an aggressive wave designed to overload passive cloaking systems. And then, just for a heartbeat, one of the Dominion ships became visible. Just a silhouette, a shadow in the void. But Monroe saw it. His crew saw it. His ship's AI saw it. Monroe turned to his tactical officer. Was that? Yeah. The officer's face was pale. We got company. Monroe's next words were simple. Cold. Target the anomaly. Fire at will. The ironclad's railguns came to life. In less than 2 seconds, its primary battery locked onto the cloaked vessel. The Dominion had never faced a species that could detect them this quickly. Their cloaking technology had worked flawlessly against every other race. But humans were different. The ironclad's main railgun fired. The slug crossed the void at nearly light speed. The Dominion ship did not dodge in time. The kinetic round tore through the cloaked vessel, shattering its organic hull into a storm of metal and flesh. The remaining 2 Dominion ships watched in horror as their comrade exploded into a million pieces. The humans hadn't hesitated. Krethak screamed into the command link. Retreat. Retreat now. The remaining 2 ships fled the system at full speed. But it was too late. Humanity knew they were watching now, and the war they had feared for so long had just become inevitable. The 2 remaining Scythe Dominion observation ships fled the human system at full burn. Their phased light cloaks flickered erratically as their panic overrode logic. They had been seen. Worse, one of their own had been obliterated in less than a second. Commander Krethak screeched over the command link. Evade! Get us out of this cursed system. Their ships twisted through the void, seeking any vector that would carry them beyond human sensors. But deep in his core, Krethak already knew it was too late. Aboard the ISV Ironclad, Captain Elias Monroe narrowed his eyes as he watched the 2 remaining contacts bolt for deep space. His crew was silent, waiting. Helm pursuit course. Now, the Ironclad's engines flared as it began the chase. Weapons? Monroe asked. Lieutenant Kendra Vasquez at Tactical replied, targets are fast, but they're running blind. Their cloaks are failing intermittently. If they fully decloak, I can put a slug through their cores. Monroe exhaled slowly. No, that wasn't what he wanted. Don't kill them, he said. Vasquez looked at him. Sir? Monroe turned to his operations officer. Can we cripple one of them? The AI, Dante 7, responded in its smooth, clinical tone. Affirmative. A precisely aimed railgun shot to the propulsion array will disable, not destroy. Monroe nodded. Do it. The Ironclad's primary railgun charged. A faint hum rippled through the deck as the slug entered the magnetic acceleration chamber. Targeting reticles danced across the Scythe Dominion ship's trajectory. Vasquez tapped the fire control. The ship lurched slightly as the railgun discharged. The kinetic slug tore through the void at near light speed and impacted the Dominion vessel's starboard thrusters. A massive shockwave rippled through the alien ship as its propulsion array shattered. Fragments of biomechanical plating peeled away, exposing raw, pulsating internals to the cold vacuum of space. The ship began to spiral, its escape trajectory destroyed. The second alien ship hesitated, then, in cowardice or fear, abandoned its crippled comrade and jumped into FTL. Monroe smirked. Typical. Got him, Vasquez confirmed. They're dead in space. Monroe leaned forward, eyes gleaming. Good. Now let's crack it open. The Ironclad maneuvered into position above the disabled Dominion ship. Marines assembled in the launch bay, loading magnetic grappling harnesses and breaching charges. Lieutenant James Cutter, leader of Alpha Squad, grinned as he slammed a fresh magazine into his kinetic rifle. First alien board and seas, hop hell of a way to make history. The launch doors rumbled open, revealing the vast blackness of space. The Dominion ship drifted helplessly, its body torn apart but still intact. SEAL and advance people. We take prisoners. Cutter signaled. The boarding shuttles launched. The hull breach was swift. The Marines cut through the armor, forcing an entry point into the alien corridors. Thick organic walls pulsated around them, like stepping inside a living creature. Jesus, one Marine muttered. This thing's alive. Stay sharp, Cutter said, moving ahead. His rifle light illuminated the darkness. Then movement. A scythed Dominion soldier lunged from the shadows, its elongated limbs swinging a plasma scythe at Cutter's head. Cutter sidestepped, fired once. The kinetic round punched through the alien's chest, spraying black ichor across the walls. The rest of the team opened fire, mowing down more Dominion warriors who attempted to resist. It wasn't a battle. It was a slaughter. The remaining crew surrendered, hissing in submission. And at the center of it all, restrained and bound, was Commander Krethak. Krethak was thrown into a containment cell aboard the ironclad. The air was too dry, too harsh for his kind, but the worst part, the humans were staring at him. Monroe entered the room. Calm, focused, unshaken. Krethak trembled. The humans didn't look afraid. Commander, Monroe said, taking a seat across from the bound alien. Let's talk. Krethak hissed. There is nothing to say. The Scythe Dominion will. Monroe placed a data tablet on the table. The screen flickered, showing recovered data from the Dominion scan logs. Your ships came here to spy on us, Monroe said. The question is, why? Krethak remained silent. Monroe exhaled, then leaned forward. Let me guess. You were hoping we wouldn't notice? That we'd let you slip in, take a look, then run back to your overlords? Krethak's mandibles twitched. Monroe smiled, slow and cold. But then, you saw something you didn't like. Something that scared you. Silence. Then Monroe's voice hardened. You know what I think? He asked. I think your Dominion was planning an invasion. Until they realized. He leaned in closer. We don't lose wars. The words hung in the air. Krethak's breathing became erratic. Humans didn't sound like prey. They sounded like something worse. Monroe sat back. So, tell me, Commander, what's it going to be? You cooperate. Or do I let my AI start digging through your ship's computers until we find out everything ourselves? Krethak's mind raced. He had to warn the Dominion. But deep down, another truth emerged. The war had already begun. Commander Krethak had never known fear before. He had led countless scouting missions, orchestrated the extermination of entire species, and watched civilizations crumble beneath the might of the Scythe Dominion. Yet now, bound in a cold, lifeless human containment cell, staring into the unreadable gaze of Captain Elias Monroe, he felt something alien coil in his chest. He felt dread, because he understood something his brood minds did not. The humans were not prey. They were monsters. Monroe leaned forward, arms resting on the steel table between them. Let's make this simple, he said. You talk, you live. You keep your mandibles shut, and we take your ship apart piece by piece until we get the information anyway. Either way, Monroe smiled, cold and sharp. We're getting what we want. Krethak knew defiance would mean nothing here. Humans did not bluff. Their warfare had already demonstrated that much. His compound eyes flicked to the data tablet on the table, still displaying the Dominion's stolen scam logs of the ironclad. The humans had access to information they were never meant to see. And if they already had this, then hiding the truth was pointless. Krethak exhaled, a slow pain sound. You are right, human. His voice was gravelly, unnatural in the air of the containment chamber. I will talk. Monroe nodded. Good. Let's start with the basics. He leaned in, his expression deadly serious. Why are we watching us? Krethak hesitated, his limbs twitching. Then he spoke. Your kind was never meant to be noticed, he admitted. The Dominion observes all emerging species, measuring their potential, assessing their weaknesses. Monroe folded his arms. And, if they are deemed manageable, Krethak continued, they are subjugated, broken, assimilated into our vast empire. Monroe's gaze darkened. And if they aren't? Krethak's mandibles twitched. They are annihilated. The room went silent. The implication was clear. Humanity had been on a list, a target for extermination. Monroe exhaled slowly, rubbing his jaw. So you were planning to wipe us out. We were considering it, Krethak corrected, until his gaze flicked to the scan logs of the ironclad. We saw this. Krethak clenched his jaw. He did not want to say the words, but Monroe's unwavering gaze bore into him like a weapon. And so, he admitted it. The brood minds were terrified of you, he muttered. Monroe's lips twitched. Good. Krethak's frustration flared. You do not understand, he hissed. Your warship, it is not logical. It is not natural. It is a monstrosity. Monroe smirked. We get that a lot. The Dominion commander trembled. Your weapons, your tactics, your refusal to surrender. You break the rules of war. Your kind fights to extinction. You do not submit. You do not falter. His voice dropped lower. You are an aberration. Monroe's expression remained impassive. You scanned our ship and realized that if you attacked, you wouldn't win. Krethak lowered his head. Yes. Silence stretched between them. Then Monroe leaned forward. Then why didn't your fleet just turn back quietly? He asked. Why send more ships to scan us again? Krethak's claws tightened against his bindings. This was the part he had not wanted to say. But it was too late now. There as Krethak's voice dropped to a whisper. Something worse. Monroe's brows furrowed. Krethak swallowed, his limbs twitching. The broodminds do not fear other species, he admitted. We are the dominant force in this galaxy. We have devoured entire civilizations. But, his mandibles clicked. There is one threat we have never conquered. Monroe sat up straighter. Go on. Krethak exhaled. His entire frame shuddered. We scanned your vessel, your weapons, your war logs. His voice wavered. And for the first time, we saw hope. Monroe's eyes narrowed. Krethak looked at him, his gaze haunted. The Scythe Dominion is not the apex predator of this galaxy. His voice dropped to a whisper. We are prey. A chill ran through the containment room. Monroe's expression darkened. Prey to who? Krethak's body tensed, as if merely speaking the name would summon them. Then he whispered it. The unseen. A ripple of unease ran through the air. Monroe's fingers tightened against the steel table. Who the hell are the unseen? Krethak's voice was hollow. They are why the Dominion exists, he said. Why we expand, why we consume. Not for power, not for conquest, but for defense. His mandibles clicked. We are not the monsters lurking in the dark. His eyes locked onto Monroe's. We are the ones running from them. Captain Elias Monroe sat in his quarters aboard the Ironclad, staring at the report. The interrogation with Commander Krethak had yielded disturbing revelations. The Scythe Dominion, an empire that had ruled the stars through fear and conquest, was itself running from something worse, a force known only as the unseen. But Monroe wasn't convinced. Aliens always had their own angles. The Dominion could be fabricating this entire story, trying to manipulate humanity into inaction. Dante 7, the ship's AI, spoke through the comm system. Captain, long-range sensor anomalies detected. You may wish to come to the bridge. Monroe sighed. On my way. He had a bad feeling about this. The Ironclad's bridge was eerily quiet. The crew's eyes were locked onto the sensor feed, where something disturbing was happening. Report, Monroe ordered. Lieutenant Vasquez gestured to the hollow display. There's something out there, sir, but the sensors can't lock onto it. Monroe frowned. A ship? Vasquez shook her head. No emissions. No mass signature. No heat trail. Monroe narrowed his eyes. Then how do we know it's there? The screen flickered. A disturbance, like a shadow, shifting just beyond perception. Dante 7's voice dropped in volume. We are detecting a gravitational displacement. Something is bending space-time, but we cannot see it. Monroe felt a chill crawl up his spine. Ghost signatures. Krethak's voice rasped from the bridge's rear. He was still restrained under arm guard, but his compound eyes were locked onto the display with an intensity Monroe had never seen before. The unseen, Krethak whispered. They are here. The bridge went silent. Monroe's hands clenched. He turned to his crew. All stations, battle stations. Alarms rang across the ship. Whatever was out there wasn't friendly. The Ironclad went into full combat readiness. Weapons armed. Shields raised. Engines at maximum readiness. Then, boom, a shock wave slammed into the ship. Not an explosion, not a weapon impact. Something had just ripped through the very fabric of space. Monroe steadied himself as the ship shuddered violently. Status. He barked. We've lost all sensor feeds for a second, wait. Vasquez's voice tightened in alarm. Something's inside the system. Multiple ships just appeared out of nowhere. Monroe turned to the display, and his blood ran cold. They had company. The ironclad's tactical readouts flooded with new contacts. Vessels, if they could be called that, were emerging for what looked like tiers in reality itself. They had no discernible shape. Their hulls shifted and warped, as if refusing to obey the laws of physics. Their bodies reflected nothing, absorbing light instead of reflecting it. They were voids in the void. Monroe felt his mind recoil at the sight. "What the hell are we looking at?" he whispered. Dante Seven's voice was shaken, an emotion the AI had never displayed before. "Captain, I do not know. These objects defy all known principles of physical structure." Krethak spoke in a haunted voice. "Their presence means only one thing." Monroe turned to him, his jaw tight. "What?" Krethak's mandibles clicked. "We are already dead." At that moment, the ironclad's comms lit up. A distress signal, but not from a human ship. A side Dominion battle fleet was calling for aid. Monroe's crew froze. The Dominion, an empire that had nearly invaded humanity, was now asking for their help. Dante Seven confirmed the message. Transmission originating from Dominion battleship Hector Prime. "Captain, they are under attack." Monroe didn't hesitate. "Patch them through, asterisk asterisk." The bridge speakers crackled, and then a panicked alien voice screamed through the channel. "Human vessel, this is War Prince Kareth of the Dominion fleet. The unseen are upon us. We request immediate assistance." Monroe inhaled. The ironclad had been built to destroy Dominion ships, and now the Dominion was begging them to fight together. He turned to his crew. "We're answering that call. Helm, take us in." The crew hesitated. Lieutenant Vasquez glanced at him. "Sir, are we really doing this?" Monroe's expression was stone cold. "If these things are dangerous enough to make the Dominion scared," he said, "then they're dangerous enough to be our problem too." He turned to Krethak. "You want to live?" Monroe asked. Krethak nodded quickly. Monroe's voice was calm, decisive. "Then tell me everything you know about how to kill these things." The Dominion commander hesitated. Then, slowly he spoke. "You cannot." The bridge went silent. Monroe's jaw clenched. "We'll see about that. Helm, engage FTL. Let's save some aliens."